So let me ask you, why are you the right person to be LA's next mayor?
Thank you. I mean, look, for me, it comes down to who's in the race. I never considered public leadership for my career. I was a business person. I came here to get my business degree. I started a business. I sold a business. But I'm seeing a lot of things happening in this city that I'm very uncomfortable with, and I feel like we need a different brand of leadership. So I look at the leadership experience of the people who are in the race. We have a person who's been in Congress for 10 years. Congress is arguably one of the most dysfunctional, ineffective institutions in the country. We have a person in the race right now who comes from USC, which has been arguably one of the most corrupt institutions in higher ed over the last 10 years, with their scandals around the medical school dean, with his prostitutes and his methamphetamines in his office, with gynecologists sexually abusing multiple women. The list goes on and on. We have city councilmen who are members of an institution that has, of 15 members, 3 of them are under federal indictment for corruption charges. So the city council is both corrupt and ineffective. And we have a city attorney whose number 2 was just recently indicted for paying off a bribe for $2 million to an outside party during the DWP billing systems implementation problems. So I come in as a person who has character, has integrity, has leadership, and is not driven by any outside interests. I am not particularly motivated by business and by further economic gain. I did fine. I did well enough. I'm not driven by party or ideology, whether it be left or right. I'm driven by practicality, by empathy, and by accountability. And I think those are the biggest things that are missing. If the city was more accountable, then we wouldn't have all these problems around corruption. People don't steal money when they think somebody's going to catch them for it. And so the fact that all these people are grabbing and stealing these millions and millions and millions of dollars from the city government just shows that we don't have the proper oversight over this. And we need a business person to come in who has built financial controls and systems and technology to take an overarching view of this.
All right. What would be your first action to address the city's homeless crisis? First action.
Yeah, my first action would be to work with individual city council members with whom I can identify. We've already identified actually lots in their districts where we can place tiny home groups of houses, which are specifically focused on transitional housing for people who are able-bodied, who are interested in work, but need to get off the streets as quickly as possible, and ideally never end up on the streets at all. In our position is that being on the streets is the cause of a lot of the mental health and addiction issues we see in our homeless population. If we can get people off the streets in the beginning, we'll stop letting people get to the point where they become long-term homeless. So our perspective is to look at how homelessness as housing, as first and foremost, we need to deal with the transitional housing issue. That if you're aging out of the foster care system, if you're otherwise able-bodied, we need to get you into a safe and secure and private location as quickly as possible, with support services around employment support services, et cetera. I mean, it's the number one issue that majority of businesses are having right now is that they can't get workers, right? It's like the capacity constraint on workers is being very, very strongly felt by business. It's unfair and it's embarrassing that we have a pool of people who are prepared to work that we can't connect in with those jobs. So that's my first and key solution, is to basically bring transitional housing into a place where we can get young people and able-bodied people into safe, secure environments so they can get back onto their onto their feet. So that's the first sort of core tenet of the plan, is to help these able-bodied folks who we call job seekers, right? The next group is our homeless people who are choosing that lifestyle. Okay, now there are various estimates on what portion of the population that is, but there is a population of people who simply want to live the way they live and be left alone. And for that group, I would propose the city purchase a piece of land you know, 45 minutes, an hour from the city, where you can get, you know, 200 acres for $10 million, okay, and create a campsite which has services and has RV hookups and it has, you know, all the things that, you know, people would like. I mean, you know, when you think about people living in RVs and living in encampments, for many of these folks, they don't want to go into shelters because they don't like the rules. They can't take their dogs and pets in some cases, so on and so forth. And there is this feeling of community that they want, and we would provide an opportunity for that.
Sorry, Dick, on that,
Sure.
buying land
Yeah.
45 minutes from the city. I mean, is that an idea? I mean, someone can go to Lancaster right now and get an RV for cheap. I mean, but they don't want to do that. They want to be in the city of LA. They want to be where the amenities are and where the services are. What makes you think people will want to go out to a campsite?
Yeah, well, look, I think that there are elements of being in the city that is drawing people here. But I think that the reason why LA has this issue in a much more dramatic way than Malibu has it, or than Manhattan Beach has it, or that even Long Beach has it, is because of LA's approach to enforcement and approach to allowing people to live in those places, right? And so I think if there is a location where people feel welcomed and they feel comfortable and they're not going to be, you know, harassed and they're not going to be bothered. It's like, this is, you know, there are rules here. It's, you know, still America. You still can't, you know, fight people and do drugs and, you know, whatever. But that it's a space for them. I believe that'll be very appealing to that population of people.
Very good. What's the right size of the Los Angeles Police Department force and why?
Okay. I think it's 12,000 sworn officers. And I need to give a little bit of nuance on this one, okay? We're at about 9,000 right now. I'm proposing that we need 3,000 more police officers, and I'd say we need 3,000 more, to the extent possible, Black and brown police officers, okay? I think we need to have more officers from the communities that we are policing as a part of the LAPD. Now, the corollary to this and the nuance here is that we can't have those 12,000 police officers doing exactly the same things in exactly the same way as they have been doing them, okay? Part of the problem we have in the city, and every city, is that when you have an emergency, you call 911, okay? It's the middle of the night, your kid's coughing too much, you get really scared, you might call 911. There's a active shooter in your building, you call 911. So that 911 operator is asked to react to a massive range of emergencies with really three options, right? They can either send police, SWAT, or through the fire department, EMS, right? EMS is a big part of that. I believe we need to do two things. We need to create a response path for domestic violence issues, okay? So, domestic disputes, right? So if somebody's in their house, my neighbor had a child with some issues. That child started waving a knife around. He was having a mental break. 8 LAPD cops came with their guns drawn. Okay, we need a different approach to that sort of a solution. So that's one, around mental health and domestic issues. And I think property crime investigations don't need to be carried on by uniformed sworn police officers. I think we can take that off of their plate. And so again, it's about efficiency. If we can be more efficient with how we're using the police, then the police can be better at the things that we need them to be better at. And their patrols can be a little bit more frequent in the neighborhoods where we see more crime. And by having more officers who look like the people in that neighborhood to build trust there, I think we can do a much better job with that. And that will reduce crime overall.
Excellent. What's an example of something you've done that wasn't popular, but was the right thing to do?
Great question. So my business, when we were growing, we started in 2002, and by 2012, we had determined that for a variety of reasons for our students, being online was going to be preferable to being online. We were able to get professional tutors who all they did was tutoring. You know, they wouldn't have to drive around. They could do back-to-back sessions. We could give them more training, et cetera. It was something that my partner and I had absolute conviction was the right decision and the right direction for that business to go. Our board members, so we had some investors. Our board members were totally opposed to it. Our senior team was totally opposed to it, and the team below them was totally opposed to it. However, over time, we pushed and we explained, and as I said earlier, we painted a vision and we showed why that vision would be better for the business and why we would have to, why ultimately, if we got there, that would be the best thing for our customers and for our investors. And it was the most difficult, painful thing I've ever had to go through professionally. Over the course of 2012 to 2015, our business lost about 80% of its revenue, and we lost about 90% of our employees in that period of time. Okay. And it was incredibly difficult for the leaders to do that hard thing. But after 3 years, we had made the shift and we were able to begin to grow the business back. And it turned out in retrospect to have been the right thing. I mean, the fact is, it was undeniable that that's where the business and the world was going and that we needed to be ahead of it. I've done painful things. That's one example. Being mayor of the city is going to be a series of very, very painful things that are going to take a lot of emotional energy from me to actually to do. And I'm willing and I'm interested and excited to do it because I love this city so much.
Excellent. The following questions are pretty much one-word answers, yes or no's.
Oh boy.
Should LA tax $1 million real estate transactions to raise money for affordable housing?
No.
Okay.
I think LA has plenty of money for affordable housing.
Excellent. Roughly, what's the median income for a household in LA?
55,000?
Close, 62,000
Okay.
in 2019.
Yeah.
Metro's considering enacting congestion pricing on local roads and freeways to reduce gridlock and fund more transit or even free transit. As mayor, would you support a congestion pricing pilot project in LA?
I would. Yeah. And in fact, Metro, they could do free pricing now. They got a $12 billion budget. They only raised $300 million in ridership fees. So I would say, as part of my overall plan around transportation, I think we have a tremendous amount of opportunity to provide better transportation opportunities to people across the country and across the city, sorry. And that includes rideshare credits, includes pooled cars. There's a lot of technology we can use that doesn't require the billions of dollars of capital investments that Metro does.
And Mayor Garcetti set a goal of eliminating traffic deaths by 2025, but he hasn't followed through, and traffic deaths have actually increased. Would you commit to make Vision Zero a reality during your tenure as mayor?
I do not believe it is a practical reality. So no, I would not do that. I would never have said that as a reality because there's a trade-off to everything, and I just don't think that's practical.
Excellent. Digital billboards, would you support having more, the same, or fewer?
Sort of depends on their location. So in certain parts of the city, I would support having more, and in certain parts of the city, I would support having the same. I think again, it would be related to the impact on the neighborhood and any sort of traffic-related accidents or fatalities. I would take a data science approach to it, though. I wouldn't take an anecdotal approach to it.
Excellent. Well, that was it. Thank you so much for your time and all your insight today. It's been nice meeting you.
Cool. Pleasure to meet you guys too. Thank you so much.